Hi. Okay. So I have been doing this for 5 or 6 years or so. It's called Daily Dracula. If you don't know, this is reading Dracula each day that a section of the book takes place. Um, Most of it is like journal entries, letters people write to each other, so they're dated. So it's just a fun way to kind of, in the real world like time, see how long the book takes to play out over the course of a few months. Now, sadly, we're about 8 reads behind. There's not a entry for every single day, but on the days there is an entry, I will post a reading of that day. You can also follow the email with your email, Daily Dracula, and they will send you a email with that daily readings section if you guys want to read it yourself or follow along. It is a public domain book, so there's lots of free sources online. And oh, like I said, we're a few days behind, so I'm going to be mass posting each of those days, and in the captions, I'll go ahead and put which day it is, so that way y'all can catch up and read with me. But yeah, other than that, let's go get ahead and get started. I'm going to read the opening of the book and the first chapter, and mm, I'm probably going to do more readings, especially whenever it gets closer to spooky season. So if you guys like this, let me know, and let me know some public domain works that you'd like to hear me read, and we can have just a wonderful reading time together. All right, let's get started. Uh, you like my little book, Aspen? It's so pretty. All right. My dear friend, Tommy Bag. Um, how these papers have been placed in sequence will be made manifest in the readings of them. All needless matters have been eliminated, so that a history almost at variance with the possibilities of later day belief may stand forth at simple fact. There is throughout no statement of past things wherein memory may err, for all the records chosen are exactly contemporary, given from the standpoints and within the range of knowledge of those who made them. Chapter 1. Jonathan Harker's Journal, kept in shorthand. May 3rd, Bistritz. Left Munich at 8:35 p.m. on 1st May. Arriving at Vienna early morning, should have arrived at 6:46, but train was an hour late. Budapest seems a wonderful place, from the glimpse which I got of it from the train and the little I could walk through the streets. I feared to go very far from the station, as we had arrived late and would start at near the correct time as possible. The impression I had was that we were leaving the west and entering the east. The most western of splendid bridges over the uh, oh my gosh, you guys. The most western of splendid bridges over the Dunabe, sorry, which is here of noble width and depth, took us among the traditions of Turkish rule. We left in pretty good time and came after nightfall to Klausenburg. Here I stopped for the night at the Hotel Royal. I had for dinner, or rather supper, a chicken done up some way with red pepper, which was very good but thirsty. Memo. Get recipe for Mina. I asked the waiter, and he said it was called paprika Händel, and that, as it was a national dish, I should be able to get it anywhere along the Carpathians. I found my smattering of German very useful here indeed. I don't know how I should be able to get on without it. Having some time at my disposal, when in London, I had visited the British Museum and made search among the books and maps in the library regarding Transylvania. It has struck me that some foreknowledge of the country could hardly fail to have the most importance in dealing with a noble of that country. I find that the district he named is in the extreme east of the country, just on the borders of 3 states, Transylvania, Moldavia, and Bukovina, in the midst of the Carpathian Mountains, one of the wildest and least known portions of Europe. I would not be able to light on any map or word giving the exact location of the Castle Dracula, as there are no maps of this country as yet to compare with our own Ordnance survey maps. But I found that Bistritz, the post town named by Count Dracula, is a fairly well known place. I shall enter there some of my notes, as they may refresh my memory when I talk over travels with Mina. In the population of Transylvania, there are four distinct nationalities: Saxon in the south, and mixed with them the Welshes, who are the descendants of the Dacians, um, Magyars in the west, and you guys, I swear I read this book every year. And I'm still struggling. I've never read it out loud. Sorry. Um, Sekiles in the east and north. I'm going among the latter, who claim to be the descendants from Attila and the Huns. This may be so, for when the Magyars conquered the country in the 11th century, they found the Huns settled in it. I read that every known superstition in the world is gathered into the horseshoe of the Carpathians, as if it were the center of some sort of imaginative whirlpool. If so, my stay may be very interesting. Memo: I must ask the Count all about them. I did not sleep well, though my bed was comfortable enough, for I had all sorts of queer dreams. There was a dog howling all night under my window, which may have had something to do with it, or it may have been the paprika, for I had to drink up all the water in my carafe and was still thirsty. Towards morning, I slept and was awakened by the continuous knocking at my door. So I guess I must have been sleeping soundly then. I had for breakfast more paprika and a sort of porridge of maize flour, which they said was mamalija, and eggplant stuffed with forcemeat, a very excellent dish, which they called implantada. Memo: get recipe for this also. I had a hurry breakfast, for the train started a little before 8, or rather it ought to have done so, but after rushing to the station at 7:30, I had to sit in the carriage for more than an hour before we began to move. It seemed to me that the further east you go, the more unpunctual are the trains. What ought they to be in China? All day long we seemed to dawdle through a country which was full of beauty of every kind. Sometimes we saw little towns or castles on the top of steep hills, such as we see in old missals. Sometimes we ran by rivers and streams which seemed to be from the wide stony margin on each side of them to the subject to great floods. It takes a lot of water and running strong to sweep the outside edge of a river clear. At every station there were groups of people, sometimes crowd, in all sorts of attire. Some of them were just like the peasants at home, or those I saw coming through France and Germany, with short jackets and round hats and homemade trousers, but others were very picturesque. The women looked pretty, except when they got near, but they were very clumsy about the waist. They had all full white sleeves of some kind or another, and most of them had big belts with a lot of strips of something fluttering from them like the dresses in a ballet, but of course petticoats under them. The strangest figures we saw were the Slovaks, who were more barbarian than the rest, with their big cowboy hats, great baggy dirty white trousers, white linen shirts, and enormous heavy leather belts, nearly a foot wide, all studded over with brass nails. They wore high boots with their trousers tucked into them and had long black hair and heavy black mustaches. They are very picturesque, but do not look prepossessing. On the stage, they would be set down at once as some old Oriental band of brigands. They are, however, I am told, very harmless and rather wanting in nature self-assertion. It was on the dark side of the twilight when we got to the Beatrice, which is a very interesting old place, being practically on the frontier, for the Borgo Pass leads from it into Bukovina. It had a very stormy existence, and it clearly showed marks of it. 50 years ago, a series of great fires took place, which made terrific havoc of 5 separate occasions. Oh my gosh. On 5 separate occasions. At the very beginning of the 17th century, it underwent a siege of 3 weeks and lost 13,000 people, the casualties of war proper being assisted from famine and disease. Count Dracula had directed me to go to the Golden Crone Hotel, which I found, to my great delight, to be thoroughly old-fashioned. For, of course, I wanted to see all I could of the ways of the country. I was evidently expected, for when I got near the door I faced a cheery-looking elderly woman in the usual peasant dress, white undergarments with long double aprons, front and back of color stuffed, fitting almost too tight for modesty. When I came close, she bowed and said, "The Herr Englishman?" "Yes," I said. "Jonathan Harker." She smiled and gave me some message to an elderly man in the white shirt sleeves who had followed her to the door. He went, but immediately returned with the letter. "My friend, Welcome to the Carpathians. I am anxiously expecting you. Sleep well tonight. At 3 tomorrow, the diligence will start for Bukovia. A place on it is kept for you. At the Borgo Pass, my carriage will await you and will bring you to me. I trust that your journey from London has been a happy one, and that you will enjoy your stay in my beautiful land. Your friend, Dracula. May 4th. I found that my landlord had got a letter from the count, directing him to secure the best place on the coach for me, but on making inquiries as to details, he seemed somewhat reticent and pretended he could not understand my German. This could not be true because up to then he had understood it perfectly. At least he answered my questions exactly if he did. He and his wife, the old lady who had received me, looked at each other in a frightened sort of way. He had mumbled out that the money he had been sent in a letter, and that was all he knew. When I asked him if he knew Count Dracula and could tell me anything of his castle, both he and his wife crossed themselves, and saying that they knew nothing at all, simply refused to speak further. It was so near the time of starting that I had no time to ask anyone else, for it was all very mysterious and not by any means comforting. Just before I was leaving, the old lady came up to my room and said in a very hysterical way, "Must you go? Oh, young heir, you must go." Oh. She was in such an excited state that she seemed to have lost her grip on what German she knew, and mixed it all up with other languages, which I did not know at all. I was just able to follow her by asking many questions. When I told her that I must go at once, and that I was engaged on important business, she asked again, "Do you know what day it is?" I answered that it was the 4th of May. She shook her head, and she said again, "Oh yes, I know that, but do you know what day it is?" On my saying that I did not understand, she went on, "It is the eve of St. George's Day. Do you know that tonight, when the clock strikes midnight, all the evil things in the world will have full sway? Do you know where you are going and what you are going to? And who you are going to?" She was in such evident distress that I tried to comfort her, but without effect. Finally, she went down on her knees and implored me not to go, at least to wait a day or two before starting. It was all very ridiculous, so I did not feel comfortable. However, there was business to be done, and I could allow nothing to interfere with it. I therefore tried to raise her up and said, as gravely as I could, that I thanked her, but my duty was imperative, and that I must go. She then rose and dried her eyes, and taking a crucifix from her neck, offered it to me. I did not know what to do, for as an English churchman, I have been taught to regard such things as in some measure indulgerous, and yet it seemed so ungracious to refuse an old lady meaning so well, and in such a state of mind. She saw, I suppose, the doubt in my face, for she put the rosary around my neck and said, "For your mother's sake," and went out of the room. I was writing up this part of the diary whilst I am waiting. I am writing up this part of the diary whilst I am waiting for the coach, which is of course late, and the crucifix is still around my neck. Whether it is the old lady's fear, or the many ghostly traditions of this place, or the crucifix itself, I do not know. But I am not feeling nearly as easy in my mind as usual. If this book should ever reach Mina before I do, let it bring my goodbye. Here comes the coach. All right. So that is the not the entire first chapter, but we read up until May 4th. So I'm going to wrap this up here so I can keep all of the actual dates separated. I'm sorry about stumbling over my words. As I did say, this is my first time doing this. But I'm very excited. Hopefully I get better at reading out loud. And I hope you guys follow along. Thanks.